Hello, everyone. I see that the bell hasn't been effective enough in pushing everyone in the room on time. Oh, you are there. And where is everyone? At the swimming pool, I guess? I wish. So welcome to the afternoon session of the second day of the ICA Congress 2025, hosted by IBGM, the Brazilian Institute for Precious Metals and Gems. Apparently, I'm on a picture. Okay, go ahead. You can take your picture now. Wonderful. And this is time again to recognize our sponsors. And you can see our sponsors here on your right-hand side, just here at the front panel. And without them, we wouldn't be able to be here. So thank you very much, sponsors, for the support. We wouldn't be also able to organize this Congress without the ICA team led by Doug Hacker, Cindy Chandler, Claudio Margarit, and without them, this wouldn't be going so smoothly as it has been. And also the ICA Congress Committee, chaired by Marcelo Ribeiro of Belmont Mineração. So this is a teamwork that resulted in a great program, great venues, great food, by the way, great salads. Aren't the salads top level here in Brazil? And also, as you can see, I'm stuffing sausages, so the room gets a little bit more packed. But nevertheless, it's time to resume our proceedings. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Johanna Levy. I think this is the correct French pronunciation. Then Johanna, she's Vice President of ESG Programs at GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. By the way, ESG, for those that have forgotten, stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And Johanna has been identifying opportunities and implementing programs for reducing the environmental impact and enhancing corporate social responsibility and fostering sustainable growth at the Gemological Institute of America for a few years now. So thank you very much for being here. The stage is yours, Johanna. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really love sustainability and I really love the industry. So we have about 40 minutes. My goal is today to show you that it's doable, it's easy. Starting the sustainability journey should not seem daunting because it is not. So we will discuss this afternoon sustainability, regulations, and consumer behaviors. If after this presentation you have identified even just a couple of actions that you can take, then really it's mission accomplished. We have to acknowledge that sustainability sometimes is a strange topic when people talk about ESG. My title is ESG, and then there are those sustainable development goals. So what does all that mean? And also, what's happening right now in the US and in Europe with sustainability in the news? How do we want to continue this journey while there seems to be backlash against sustainability? So while there will always be people debating on the difference between ESG, environmental, social, and governance, sustainability, sustainable development goals, corporate social responsibility, it's very much similar. And as you can see, the Sustainable Development Goals, so the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, very much align with the 3 pillars of ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance program. So for today's presentation, we'll talk about sustainability, but you could almost rename this presentation ESG presentation or Corporate Social Responsibility presentation or Sustainable Development Goals presentation. It doesn't really matter. As mentioned, if you've watched the news recently, you see that there has been a little bit of backlash against sustainability. However, However, a 2023 Bloomberg study said that 3/4 of executives still think that it's worth the backlash. And even a more recent 2025 survey that is right here shows that an overwhelming majority of organizations, they don't stop their ESG or sustainability program. They just make sure that it aligns even better with the core business. And honestly, that should be the rule for every single sustainability program. And if you take a look down, only 11% change their ESG program, even in this very conflicting environment. And you might be wondering, why are they continuing? Well, they're continuing because sustainability makes business sense. 64% of consumers, beyond jewelry, 64% of consumers include sustainability in the top 3 attributes in their purchase. 54% are ready to pay a premium for sustainability. Now, we'll discuss it a bit later, there is a discrepancy between what they're saying they're willing to pay, what they are willing to pay, and the premium that that organizations are trying to put on them. So those 3 figures need to be aligned. As mentioned earlier today, not only executives see that it makes sense, not only sustainability drives business, but also younger generations, especially jewelry consumers, younger generation of jewelry consumer want more sustainability. So 45% have spoken about sustainability to their jeweler versus 34% of 40 to 65-year-old. It's still just 45%, we discussed that earlier today, so it's still not the majority, but it's a large increase versus the 40 plus years old. It's the just published, almost published at JCK, I think, Plum Club survey. I found some data online and I thought that I would share with you. It's about responsible practices, responsible business practices in the jewelry industry. And it shows that the first one is ethical sourcing. The second one, fair trade labor. The third one, traceability. But also it shows that between 2023 and 2025, everything increased in terms of importance. So this is a very good sign. Those 2 graphs are again from the Plum Club, and it's about, the first is, if you find a piece of jewelry that you really want to purchase but cannot verify that it has been responsibly sourced, would you still make the purchase? Yes, at almost 60%. So we're not there yet. However, the 59% has dropped 4% in 2 years. So that's a very good sign. The other graph answers the question, would knowing more about a jewelry store or brand's responsible business practice influence you to purchase from one store or brand over another? 68% said yes. So 68% of jewelry consumers surveyed by the Plum Club in 2025 are saying that they are influenced by a retail store or brand's responsible business practices. So again, that's a very good sign. I did a presentation last year or the year before, and we were sharing the graph on the right-hand side because we loved it so much. It shows that responsible products or sustainable products grew 8% more in the past 5 years than non-responsible or non-sustainable product. And the graph on your right shows actually that the more sustainability claims it makes, the more it sells. So products with 4 sustainability claims grew 2.5 more than products with just 1 sustainability claims. So we have work to do, but also it's very inspiring. And going back to the 54% consumers who were ready to pay a premium for sustainable product. Well, what kind of premium? This slide is about the percentage, the additional percentage that they would be willing to pay. As you can see, it's very little. A vast majority is less than 5%. And data shows that sustainable products, not jewelry sustainable products, overall sustainability products are often sold at a 28% premium. So 28% premium versus I'm willing to pay up to 5%, there is a big discrepancy here. So sometimes we're saying, well, they're not willing to pay, but they are. But it's just that they're not willing to pay as much as we would probably need them to pay. So we have to think about how we can develop sustainability initiatives without having a 28% price increase, because that's what they're willing to pay. So in this first 1/3 part of the presentation, we discussed how sustainability drives business, how sustainable products sell more, how in the jewelry industry, younger consumers are willing to push for more sustainability. There is another thing that should prompt companies to work more on sustainability. It's European regulations. More precisely, we have 3 pieces of regulation. Only 2 can be linked to jewelry. The third one, digital product passport, is not. But let me start with this one. So the digital product passport is the idea that any product, let's say a washing machine, a TV, should come with environmental and social information on its life cycle. So it's not for jewelry products. However, if everything of value that you can buy in Europe comes with a digital product passport, don't you want your jewelry to also come with a digital product passport? And the brands, the European brands, I can assure you, are currently working on that. Because if you buy a TV and you have life cycle information, if you buy a washing machine, if you even buy your coffee and you know where it's coming from, then more and more you want that in every single of your purchase. So let's now move to the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Initiative. It's about disclosing your social impact, environmental impact, following the ESRS framework, and also it mandates organization to do a double materiality, and we'll discuss the double materiality. The central one, CSDDD, was actually a little bit toned down, just like the CSRD in the February omnibus regulations. So CSRD was mandated for all organizations, but now it's just very large organization, 1,000 employees, 50 million revenue, or 25 million balance sheet. And the CSDDD was mandating all organizations to do a supply chain due diligence throughout their supply chain. Now it's just for tier 1, unless they are likely to, how can I phrase that? Unless you're tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, up until the raw materials have known risks. So just restating that, the CSDDD now is just about your tier 1 supplier, but on supply chains, just like the colored stone supply chain, where there are known risks beyond your tier 1 supplier, then organizations are mandated to show a management plan on how they're going to address those risks. So consumers are driving sustainability. Business is driving sustainability. Regulations is driving sustainability. Now organizations have to do sustainability, have to start sustainability initiatives. How you do it? How do you choose between working on living wages, gender equality, human rights in your supply chain, science-based target, biodiversity? How do you choose your priorities? And I'm a big proponent in sustainability of not reinventing the wheel, because we don't have time. Literally, we don't have time, and very often we don't have the resources. So in order for this industry, for organizations who have not started their sustainability journey, for them to understand which sustainability topic should I focus on, then you can just take a look at what other stakeholders, other brands, other retailers, other miners have listed as their most important topics. And here you can find the topics for Kering and for Tiffany. And once you've identified 10, 16, 20 topics without ranking them, so human rights in the supply chain, living wages in your operations, gender equality, climate change, water management. Once you've identified those key topics, then you can do what is called a double materiality. It sounds very fancy and very complicated, but it's not, actually. It's about stakeholder engagement. It's about talking to your board, to your C-suite, to your employees, your suppliers, NGOs, and asking them to rank the list of topics that you've identified based on how your organizations impact on them, how those topics impact on the planet, on the environment, and the potential risks and opportunities, financial risks and opportunity that they bring. So it's called a double materiality, impact and finance. And here you have the Richemont materiality matrix. Everything here is public. All those materiality matrices, all the graphic, everything is found online, so you can find them and use them. And once you've done this exercise of a double materiality, which is mandated by the European reporting law, then you can focus on what matters the most to your organization. And we know that very likely it will be climate change and supply chain due diligence. And what I wanted to share with you today is free, accessible framework and tools to actually measure your environmental impact, your climate change footprint, and also to do a supply chain due diligence exercise. So here you have a very widely used description of Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 greenhouse gas or GHG emissions. So we call them greenhouse gas, GHG, CO2, CO2e for equivalent, because we also include other type of global warming gas like methane, but we're talking about the same thing. So Scope 1 are direct emissions from sources that are controlled or owned by your organizations. Fuel combustions, boiler, vehicle. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emission from electricity, steam, heating, cooling. What's interesting with the Scope 2 emissions is they're not really generated at your headquarters or at your store. They're not. They're generated, where electricity is produced, but you own them. You own your Scope 1, you own your Scope 2, and you also own your Scope 3, which is all the rest. Supply chain emissions, upstream and downstream emissions. And for all companies, Scope 3 emissions, so the ones from raw materials you source, business travel, employee commuting, capital goods. All those emissions, those 15 categories, are the largest. We're talking 90 to 98% versus 2 to 5% for Scope 1 and Scope 2. So working on your own emission is a fantastic first step. It's great, but we have to acknowledge that impact is very likely in your downstream and upstream emission. So I found this free tool online, SME Climate Hub. It's not the only one. There are many free tools online. And what I wanted to do with you is calculate together the carbon footprint, CO2 footprint, GHG footprint of a fictitious company. So the first slide is about the country and the industry. Then it will just tell you the kind of information it will need. Nothing extraordinary, electricity, heating invoices, how many employees, your square footage, invoices of expenses. And then you will see in every single page, you can click, I don't know. You don't have to be perfect, but this tool is really a good way to get started. So we start with the reporting year. Then number of employees, are they remote, are they on site? Company revenue, square footage, electricity from invoices, heating information, leased vehicles, do you use fuel for machinery, business travel information, hotel nights, employee commuting, companies' expenses on freight transportation, capital goods, business services. And that's it. That's it. This is a fictitious carbon footprint of my US-based fictitious company in just 12 slides, relying on heating invoices, cooling invoice, number of employees, expenses invoices. So nothing that is really complicated or out of reach for any organizations, including the small ones. And so you literally here just calculated your Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3, and you can use that tool or any other tool to track your progress over time. Done. The second topic, sustainability topic, that will very likely be at the top of your double materiality matrix will be supply chain due diligence. And similarly, just like the carbon tool, there are free frameworks that you can use to get started with this exercise. So the colored gemstone supply chain is very complex. 80% around comes from small scale and artisan miners. So that adds to the difficulty for traceability. And also some gem producing countries are listed in the graph on your right with a very high risk of child labor. And that prompts some stones like sapphire from Madagascar, emerald from Colombia, to be listed in the list of goods and products using child labor and slave labor. And this is, you can Google it, it's accessible. So any consumer who does a little bit of research can find those three pieces of information with some stones listed as using child labor or slave labor. One existing supply chain due diligence framework is the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, due diligence framework for responsible minerals. And it has 6 steps that I will go over quickly. One is about establishing strong management system. So what does that mean? That means making sure that you have competent staff, senior staff, and adequate resources for the due diligence. You also have to build systems like chain of custody or traceability systems. You also should engage your suppliers. We had a question this morning about supplier engagement, ideally including due diligence expectations into contracts and providing mechanism for grievance. Step 2 is identify and assess risks in the supply chain. So the OECD due diligence framework particularly focus on risk from conflict financing, human rights abuse, or illicit activities. So this involves collecting information on your supply chains, mapping all those steps, and assessing the data that you found, origin, suppliers, with data that is available in this framework. Step 3 is about addressing and responding to the risks you identify. So you need to build a strategy to prevent or mitigate the adverse impact that you have identified. You have to work with suppliers and affected stakeholders to make sure that you have a plan and a measurable plan with measurable goals. This framework really insists on the necessity to track, measure, set goals, and report. Oh, back. Communicate. The OECD framework asks organizations to report annually on their finding, and the goal is really to enhance transparency for stakeholders, to make sure that the public knows what's happening and how you are tackling all those risks and mitigating those risks. And the last step is really about cooperating. And here, what the OECD asks is to make sure that ideally, organizations really take responsibility for the adverse impact and put a solid remediation in place to really try to put back affected stakeholders in the state that they were before. And OECD is not the only framework. There is also the RJC framework that has a lot of requirements, but not all of them are mandated. They really mandate the ones that are extraordinarily important. Regarding human rights, organizations must commit to the UN guiding principle on business and human rights. Working hour limits, minimum wages, prohibition of workplace violence and harassment, prohibition of child labor and slave labor, prohibition of manufacturing of hazardous products, making sure that you also safeguard threatened species and protect biodiversity in your location and surrounding locations. Making sure that there is no mining on World Heritage sites and also adjacent location. Making sure that mining organizations have processes in place for legally designated protected areas. Making sure that you manage well tailings and waste to ensure that there is no catastrophic failure. So I just named a few of them, but there is this very pragmatic approach of separating the nice to have and the must have, and I covered a few must have. There is another framework. Gaetano was here, Dr. Gaetano Veloso was here yesterday. The CIBJO has released a report. Let me give you the name. I want to give you the name. The CIBJO Jury ESG and Sustainability Roadmap. It was just released in February this year, I think, and it's a very good document that gathers a lot of information. And here you can find a little play on the SDGs, again, with the kind of actions that organization in the jewelry industry could take. So as you can see, the SDGs can really inspire and drive action. And my last slide is about a sustainable product. Those are the same ring. One is sustainable, the other one doesn't make any sustainability claim. How can you differentiate them? They're the same metal, same car, same clarity. How can brands and retail store differentiate a product that has been responsibly sourced and the one that may not be as transparent on its supply chain? And that's hard because those are the same product. So everything comes from how the retail store will talk to you about this product, all the materials that accompany this product. And as we heard this morning, sometimes it's very hard to explain sustainability in a retail store. So a lot of work to do. Thank you so much, and we have 10 minutes for question.
Thank you very much. Wow. It was, let me tell you, it was really a very comprehensive overlook on what ESG means, and more than that, how can companies, organizations take action? And I think that's the main conclusion here. When you talked about greenhouse gas effects, and there in every company that we have in our private lives, there are little things that we can do, at least to measure. And you focused on that. And that is measuring our carbon impact. More than that, being aware that there is a carbon footprint in our activity might make us change the way we do business. And that was really enlightening. Thank you very much indeed. We do have time for questions. So yes, Ellen. Microphone. You can do gesture. Okay.
It's L Hill from Hill and Company. I love the last slide where you said, how can you tell? And I wonder if there's been any studies into what is the best way to carry the message all the way to the end consumer? Is it an insignia on the ring? Is it communications? Is it staff training in store? Is it marketing? Has there been any data on that yet?
Yes, it works now. I haven't seen data. My answer would be all of the above. Because we need to, I was about to say we need to go big, so I'm sorry, that's what I'm thinking. Sustainability is so complex. I can see you and I'm passionate about that. I love talking to you. But at the same time, I'm very much aware that what I shared with you for 40 minutes can be a bit dry. And so how do you make that appealing? I think we all agree that Mimo's story this morning was appealing. It's not dry, it's fantastic. So those kind of stories need to be conveyed all the way from here to retail stores. We need those stories. And some organizations are working on that, on creating those stories, and that's fantastic. But I think we need the stories, and we need the training, and we need your commitment, all of the above. Let's go big.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your showing here us the components of being sustainable. I'm just missing one thing, that is, as I'm from Germany and Europe, there is a law in Europe. I'm pretty sure you know it. I just looked it up, the name in English. It's called the Corporate Sustainable Due Diligence Directive from the European Union, as you said. And we are forced or obligated by law to follow most of what you have just presented. So I think that's a very important missing part, that companies which are located in the European Union, they are obligated by law to follow nearly everything what you said. So for us, it's something like making or starting another process with another company and another organization gives us really big bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. And I think you have to keep in mind that different countries have different laws, and some countries already did a lot of things to establish that. So I just want to emphasize that there should be also different views on that. So as a European or German company, we are obligated by law to do that. I don't know how it is in other different countries, but at the end of the day, if you buy a European product, you know it has to be sustainable by law.
Absolutely.
Thank
absolutely,
you.
Absolutely. The CSDDD was in my slide. And I mentioned that companies with 1,000 employees and a level of balance sheet of revenue, 50 million in revenue, need to report. It's a good news and a bad news. The bad news is that before it was much smaller companies with a much smaller level of revenue. So in February this year, the government or the European Union decided to give a little bit more time for companies to report. So now it's really just large company. But the good thing is it's still there. And we know, because we work on those supply chain, it starts at the top, but then it trickles down. So if you're a supplier of a company that has to report, they will ask you the data that will enable them to report, and you will ask your supplier, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, and I think Germany actually proactively had a due diligence law before the European Union, so even better.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mimo.
Again, hello, yeah. When you are demonstrating on your picture, there's something which you put, and you put some women. You talked about the child labor, but you put some women and some people and some kids right here. But I want to remind you, this is about the community. When we are growing up, it is very, very common for us to go out with our mothers and our fathers in the fields. So most of this is taken it wrongly. But I think it is good to clarify, like even the picture which you put there, those kids are not child labor doings. Those kids they're accompanying their parents in their work doing, and that's how we are trained how to do the mining, that's how we are trained how to do the farming, and that's how we are trained to be doing the right things which you are telling us right now to do. And I think he can ask the question.
When I was little, I would go with my grandfather, and his hobby was woodworking. And I was maybe 8 years old. And he'd go to everybody's house in the family and redo their house and just, make it beautiful. And I would love to go with him and work with him. And I thought it was the most fun thing in the world. Is that child labor? Or where's the line draw?
So first, I'm French, and in France, we have very, very long summer, and the very, very long summer come from my parents' generation and the generation before, who was working in the farms during the summer for the harvest. So I'm very much aware of that. Second, the picture is not my picture. I didn't choose that picture. It's a front cover of a US government document on child labor and slave labor. I didn't choose it. I agree with you. Child labor can be nuanced. However, there are experts. I'm not an expert on child labor, because that's the beauty of sustainability. You can't be an expert on everything. You know a little bit about everything, but you can't be a biodiversity expert and a human rights lawyer expert. There are some difference. Some things are acceptable and some things are not acceptable. Hard labor for kids is just not acceptable. So hard. I agree with you that accompanying, etc. But ILO and experts, more experts than me, have determined what is acceptable. So family work in certain circumstances can be acceptable. Hard labor, carrying things that is above your weight, putting yourself in danger, using fertilizer in agriculture, that's just forbidden for kids.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in the back, please. We have 2 minutes for 17 questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you. The context of my question is related with a political trend, recently political trend to deregulate the industries. Now, the point is that you think it's possible, in your opinion, to standardize all the due diligence reports in one, just only one. For example, in gemstones, we have many of it. We have the CFG Blue Books, we have the RJC, we have the OECD guidelines for responsible mineral supply chain. We have the European Union recently law about the due diligence. In Colombia, we have a lot of it. So what do you think about it? It's possible to reduce it, to deregulate it, or not? Will be words in the future.
So,
thanks.
And let me know if I misunderstood the question. What the ask is to report. The European reporting framework is kind of aligned with GRI, and so are many other frameworks. I think you are completely allowed to pick the framework, publicly available, globally recognized framework that works the best for you, whether it's RJC, whether it's GRI, whether it's working on the business, UN business and human rights, whether it's CIPJO, as long as, going back to the OECD, as long as there is a management system, processes, resources, management, meaning experts, and publicly report every year, I think you can meet the OECD requirement with many other framework.
Thank you very much. Guillermo, you have 30 seconds. 10 seconds for the questions, 20 seconds for the answer.
That's good. No, just I want to make a note. When you reference that study of that developing about the child labor, it was mentioned Colombia, but in Colombia it's a tough thing. It's a criminal case to have child labor. And I haven't heard in the last 10 years any single case of child labor in the mines, any single. Basically, there is a lot of requirements besides your age, insurance, a lot of courses that you need to take before you get inside a mine. So I just want to be clear because in Colombia, we don't have any case that I remember for the last 10 years. And it's a criminal thing to have a child labor in Colombia. So maybe it was something related to any other activity, no gemstones. I don't know how long ago was that study, but I just want to make that note.
And thank you for that. And you're making a very good point. This list, so the US list, not mine, is published every year. And they list the sources. And you're making a very good point because as I was looking into it yesterday, I was, looking for the gems and the sources. My recollection is that the data in Colombia dated early 2010. So I think that echoes what you say. My point, I was not trying that. What I was trying to point out is this information is out there, available to everybody, not written by me, written by the US government. So the ask is, what are you doing to address it? And you just answer it. You said there are laws. Well, that's a good answer. I think that's a very good answer. So the point is not to point finger, is more, there are risks. What's the plan?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Johanna. What a talk, and What a clarifying moment we had today. It's because this is really important, and each and every one of us, actually, with little steps, we can do a huge difference